I've always hated the term Metroidvania. It was really Metroid itself that popularized the idea of running around in maze-like areas and making yourself stronger via upgrades and items rather than leveling yourself up. The Vania portion kind of popularizes RPG elements, but it's really nice to see these types of games back in the popular light. For instance, Shadow Complex just recently came out on the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One again, once again showcasing that players want to play in a two-dimensional area and blast everything in sight while upgrading yourself. Well, Metroid, as good as it was, wasn't without its faults. And in particular, there were a lot of glitches and odd textures that shouldn't have been in there. So what if a guy decided to make a game like Metroid, but used the glitches as his inspiration and focus? Axiom Verge was released in 2015 by one guy by the name of Thomas Happ. Happ is an engineer for Petroglyph Games, responsible for games like Star Wars Empire at War and End of Nations. Turns out he made Axiom Verge on his off hours, taking about 5 years before it actually came out on any sort of system. You play as Trace, a man who wakes up after an explosion due to a frozen pressure valve knocks him out. Much like in Another World, however, he doesn't wake up in a hospital. He wakes up on an alien world and has no clue how he got there. It's up to Trace to figure out what's going on, who to trust, and how to get back home. It's definitely one of those games that gives you a complete sense of dread right from the start. You're on an alien world, you're mostly alone, and you're completely lost right from the get-go. And holy crap, does it get freaky! It's very clear that Tom Happ grew up admiring Metroid, and it shows. The alien world of Sudra draws some great parallels to Zebes, with some modifications to the design of the planet. While not every enemy has to be named, they all have a lot of detail to them. Whether they fly around and expand out into a bar to fire at you from above, roll around to smash into you, or realize you're a threat and just fart in your general direction, each creature is as threatening to your health as they are shocking to your senses. The planet has several distinct zones, and you'll be wandering around aimlessly to find the next thing that will make you stronger. The music in this game is really strong and adds to the ambiance. I was thinking, based on the title music, that this whole soundtrack was going to be a lot more NES or Game Boy chiptune based, and a lot of that is in the music. However, there is a lot more to it than just simple chiptunes, and the work put into the soundtrack adds to the sense that there's something wrong with this whole situation Trace is in. In fact, this whole game gives you a sense of dread. The things that want to help you are giant heads attached to walls. Let me say that again. The things that are benevolent are giant heads attached to walls that only a mother like Motherbrain could love. Then there are the bosses that look like giant mutant worm things that would make Kraid look like a normal animal to us. Axiom Verge still uses a lot of the tricks that made Metroid and Super Metroid a success, including the surprises of giant bosses that look like worms mutated into monster cyborg things, mazes that don't completely confuse people but still require some mapping, and enough of a story that keeps you going. So it's Metroid, except that instead of fighting Mother Brain, you're trying to help her children, I guess. Instead of being a bounty hunter going after space pirates, you're a scientist going after, well, I guess it would be the truth, I suppose. and everything else Metroid, except you change all the areas to look even stranger and you don't have to worry about floating jellyfish. So, what didn't I like?
It's actually hard to say. Most adventures like this take about 3 or 4 hours to complete the first time through if you don't know what you're doing, and the replay value comes in the ability to speedrun the game at higher difficulties, attempting to beat the game with as much or as little as possible. However, the game left me wanting more, and while I know there's more if I get a high enough completion rate, I feel like the game could have been longer or bigger. Maybe it's just me having played games where the maps have been much bigger than Axiom Verge's, but with the atmosphere and gameplay being top-notch, I almost feel like there could have been more and it wouldn't have hampered the final product. The only other thing that I could think of would be the redundancy of weapons I found. While there are a lot of weapons that you can use, I found myself only using a few of them while attempting to build up my strength and health with the power-ups that I found along the way. Eventually I found the flamethrower, which is definitely the overpowered weapon of the game, and that pretty much destroyed everything, including the final boss, rather quickly. Even though it's discovered somewhat late in the game, it's funny to find that there really isn't a balance between weapons, and that some of these rather interesting finds are rather useless in the end due to lack of damage or lack of usefulness. In fact, a lot of this comes into the big weakness a lot of these games have: the backtracking. While it's not as bad as some of the latter Castlevania games on the Game Boy Advance and the DS, there's still a lot of backtracking to be had once you get more power-ups and weapons. Usually I like coming back to an area, but then I realize that unless I have a precise path, I usually don't enjoy the backtracking. Speedrunning doesn't help this either, as my minor OCD to complete both the map and item collection in a timely manner merely slows me down and makes me panic.
These are things that really only affect me, though, and I'm sure there are a lot of other people out there that would like these elements as much as I don't. But the first thing that I think about when wanting to start to play a game in the first place is the impact it has on my wallet, and that's probably why you're here as well. It's time once again to ask the question: is Axiom Verge worth your cash?
Axiom Verge is about $20 on just about every current generation platform out there, including the 3DS, PlayStation 4, Steam, the Wii U, PlayStation Vita, and the Xbox One. I ended up getting it on the Wii U on sale for about $18, and the Steelbook you saw me hold was also about $20. I think most people will be happy with a digital purchase, but I don't think it's worth the full $20 unless you're going for the physical Steelbook, which indie games and GameStop coincidentally put at that particular price. This, however, comes with a Steam key, a physical installation disc, and a soundtrack CD. Physical copy nuts will definitely want to get this.
I do think you should play Axiom Verge, no matter where you decide to play it. It brought me happy and warm memories of a time where I used to get lost in mazes looking for energy and weapon pickups just so I could carry on to the next objective. I'd love to see a continuation of this series, or perhaps a different game done in this style. And considering that this one was done in his off hours, I'm really impressed, and I look forward to seeing stuff like this in the future from him. I just have to get those images of those disembodied heads out of my brain. It's just a little freaky. Like Puzzle Agent Gnome freaky.